Hey guys, got a little bit of a lesson for you today. I'll try to follow this up with some notes so that for my more visual people, they'll be able to actually look at the material and study it. Whereas some of you who might be a little bit more auditory might prefer the video so that you can actually listen to me explain it. But I think the video will at least give us a little bit of an introduction to the idea. At the end of next week, I'm going to ask for a genre from you. Don't panic. I don't expect them to be good. It's okay. I mean, that's part of, writing a draft. And I haven't given you the most direction on this stuff yet because I want to start slow. With these genres, remember what I said when the last blog. It's important to know what it is you're writing and who you're writing to. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to give you a lot of ideas, a lot of different prompts to produce genres. But what I actually want to help you out with today is a bit of what I call the composition toolkit. One of the big problems you guys are going to face in this class is the blank screen. When you're trying to write something, you're sitting there, you have no idea what you want to do, and you're just like, what do I do? As somebody who has not been out of school that long, I appreciate the terror of that moment. Part of the reason that you guys have this, though, is that you don't necessarily, you're not used to the idea of just writing and letting writing simply stand for what it is. Meaning, when you write, you have to give yourself permission to make a lot of mistakes, and you have to let them stand. You have to turn in the bad stuff. Because remember, I'm going to look at it, I'm going to give it a grade, it's going to be awful, but then I'm going to tell you how to fix it. I'm going to tell you how to strengthen it. I'm going to give you specific ways of going in and improving parts. So, it's absolutely essential that you guys get stuff to me. That's the absolute most important thing at this point. But let's jump into the material for today. What I want to do is I want to give you guys some helpful hints on getting started so that you're not just vomiting words out on the page. We're going to start with the modes. The modes are an incredibly lame way of teaching writing, but they are useful. Modes are different forms of writing that we can shift in and out of pretty much at will. And you'll find that different modes have different strengths depending on what it is you want to do. So let's not beat around the bush on this. Let's get straight into it. The first mode that I find the most accessible is narrative. Narrative is a really good one too because most students don't think about narrative when they're doing more formal stuff like research papers and all. If you've never heard of the concept of narrative, and again, I'm going to include some notes with this so that you can kind of follow along with the lesson format as we go through. Narrative is simply telling a story. Anytime you string together a series of events, whether it's from your perspective or from a fictional person's perspective, or you're trying to write from, I don't know, Barack Obama's perspective, that's a narrative. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to be a sequence of events. So anytime you start telling a story, that is a rhetorical mode, and it's useful. Narration is something you can use to give your writing a little bit of personality, and it can help you if you get stuck. If you're trying to write something about what you think about the tax system, or something you think about a particular game console or something like that, and you run into a wall, start telling a story about your experience. That's a perfectly legit way to go. And most students simply never even think about telling a story, especially one that requires the word I. Most students don't think that they can use the word I. You can. If you use it too much, don't worry, I'll tell you, and then you can fix it. I love coffee. So, narrative is one of the first options. The next is exposition. Exposition is a bit of a complicated term, but it's a pretty useful one. Exposition is when you say how to do something. So, when my car broke down, and I was looking for directions on how to check the transmission fluid because I have no idea how to do anything with cars, I got on YouTube and there was a guy showing me how to find the stick to check the fluid. It was on my car. So he was like, first lift up the hood. Yes, I needed that step. Lift up the hood, find this part of the car, do this, do that, step-by-step instructions. Exposition is when it's kind of like telling a story, but you're talking about a process. If you write something that's along the lines of a how-to guide, how to cook something, a recipe is an exposition. It tells you how to go about the steps. And believe it or not, for the genres, you want to mess around with a recipe? Sure, As long as you put some writing to it, we might have to go and add some other things to it, but we can make that work. Expositions, how to, describing steps. Next one, description. This was something that always drove me nuts. A lot of writing professors teach narrative and description separate from each other, but they are very closely related. Description is when you appeal to the senses, when you bring things like color, sound, taste, smell. Those are descriptive. Anything that excites the senses or makes you imagine something. Narrative and description are not separate from each other. Most good narratives are going to use a lot of description. It's what makes narrative vivid. But you can write a pure description. Hold on, let me show you. Let's say I wanted to simply write a description of Hazer the Minotaur. He's actually in my son and I play Dungeons and Dragons. And I just got this guy in the mail, and he's going to be the bad guy on the latest campaign. Yeah, he's cool looking. I like him a lot. Oh, bow to the Minotaur. But I could seriously just kind of first begin by describing Hazer here. Just writing a description. I could say his cape is red. He's taller than other figures by at least 2 feet. He is very muscular, very strong. Red eyes indicate evil. And he has armor on his shoes, which I'm sure is very handy when somebody's shooting arrows at you. So you see, this is a pure description. It's a little weird for a rhetorical mode, but you can use it a lot in conjunction with other modes to create different genres. A pure description is possible for a genre. If you really just want to do something descriptive, if you want to describe a baseball or a piece of equipment that you use in your classes, we can start there. Remember, if you don't know the clear identity of your genre at the beginning, it's not necessarily the biggest deal in the world. As long as you are using one of the tools that I've given you, we can figure out what it is later. All right, so that's description. Definition is a really interesting one. Everybody knows what definition is. It's what you go in to look for when you flip through your dictionary, right? You're looking for word meanings. Why on earth would we ever want to discuss definition? Well, there are some words, depending on your topic, that might have a hazy or controversial definition. Case in point, marriage. The definition of marriage right now is one of the biggest issues in American politics. Who is a marriage between? How many people are involved? What exactly does it constitute? Is it sacred? Yada, 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 whatever. So when you sit down and you try to define marriage, depending on what angle you're taking to it, well, that's actually kind of useful. You can shift into that when you're writing in order to make a point. Let's double back a bit. Let's say you want to define fair taxation. Again, do you see what I'm doing here? Definition is a really cool thing to use when your definitions are somehow controversial. That's perfectly legitimate as well. You can kind of just mix and match these up, and all that has to thread them together is a topic. As long as you're kind of, using these, you're going to have something that's at least on par. Classification. Classification is a lot like definition, where you're trying to group things together into different categories. I'm trying to think what's a good one for this. This is one I talk about these with my face-to-face students, and this one's always a bit tough. Let's say you're doing a review, and you're trying to rank different science fiction novels or mystery novels. And you talk about grouping novels into different categories based upon certain things that happen. You're engaging with classification. My hand looks huge there. You're engaging in classification, and that can be pretty useful too. I tell you what, I had dental surgery today, and I hurt. So I'm going to hold off on argument. Argument is the final mode, and that one has a little bit more beef to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually end this video here. We'll have 2 this week. And at the end of the week, I'll post the video on argument. And I'll try to give you guys an example of an interesting genre that you might be able to use between now and then. It's been fun, and I'll see you guys again soon.